Hello and welcome to Reasoned Live. Please do comment along on whatever platform you're watching this on, whether that be Twitter, Facebook or YouTube. And if you like today's live show, please do consider hitting that subscribe button and the little notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content, because I'm working each week to produce as much content as I possibly can. Now, Reasoned is also over halfway to hitting our fundraising target via our GoFundMe page. The link to that will be in the description. So any support you can offer us there really does go a long way in ensuring we can continue producing our high quality, free thinking content. Anyway, that's enough in the way of housekeeping from me. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by my brave friend, and I don't use that without really meaning it, he really is, and fearless campaigner Calvin Robinson. Calvin is a school governor and former assistant principal, a former Brexit Party candidate, and a campaign champion alongside me and others for the Defund the BBC campaign. Now, this evening, we're going to be discussing everything from Black Lives Matter to the BBC's so-called comedy and the BBC Rich List. Let's get him on. Hello, Calvin.
Darren, good to be back. How are you doing?
I'm marvellous. How are you doing? You've had quite the week.
It's been an interesting one. Let's just say that.
Definitely.
Usually, I'm campaigning about issues that I care about. This week, I've been kind of defending myself. It's been much more personal. I'm not used to that. It's less political and more personal this week. So yeah, I'm adjusting. Let's say.
How's that been, though? Has it been taking its toll, if you don't mind me getting personal for a second?
I mean, it's never easy when people are attacking your character or attacking you as an individual. I know you've experienced this a lot in the past. I just wish people would address my ideas and not go for the ad hominem, just look at this guy and taking elements of my physical characteristics and destroying me for them. It is a bit soul destroying. I hear a lot people say, you need to have thicker skin, or they'll say, you're in politics, be tougher, and that's fair enough. But at the same time, we want normal people in politics.
Exactly.
Don't we want more people that care about things, less career politicians, and you can't get that if you cancel everyone and destroy them and attack them just for standing up and having an opinion. It's not fair.
I totally agree. And I mean, I couldn't look my little brother in the eye, for example, and say to him, oh yeah, you should get involved in politics. I don't know about you.
I would struggle to tell my students at this point that they should stand up and raise their heads above the parapet. And that's sad, because that should be what I'm encouraging them to do. Just this week I've tried to avoid most of the mentions because I've had literally thousands of people berating me. But while I've been able to do that, other people haven't, and I've had messages from my family, people who are upset for me,
yes,
for the attacks, and that's the difficult thing. When you got your little sister or your mother saying, are you okay, and I'm worried for you, and all that. That's not a nice place to be.
It's not, and I mean, I've even had messages about the abuse that you've been getting online from mutual friends, but also from people that don't know you, just saying, I can't actually believe what people are saying. What possesses someone to attack something like your hair, for example? Right. It's just so ad hominem and deeply personal, and actually just pretty bloody vile.
Well, this is the thing. All I do is I speak what I think, and I don't try to speak for anyone but myself. I share my opinions, but I could be wrong. I'm open to the suggestion that I could be wrong on many things. I'm sure I am, but I'd love for people to challenge me on my ideas and my thoughts and my opinions, rather than say, oh, his hair isn't the right shape, or how dare he have an afro, he's
Bizarre.
Not one of us, or his hair is too dry, or all these things, it's in the wrong shape, he hasn't had a shape up, it's not cut. I'm like, what? Sorry, what? I don't grow my hair for you personally. I'm not trying to be a member of your club, whatever club that is. I'm standing up for what I believe in. And I think some of the things I'm standing up for will help you too. But if you don't think that, then let me know.
Mm-hmm. And as I say, you have been through the wars a little bit this week, but that was after a ding-dong with Piers Morgan. Now, Calvin, before I play the clip of you on Good Morning Britain, could I just get you to give a little bit of background of why you were invited on to the show and what happened during it?
Yeah, so I was invited on to discuss Britain's Got Talents, because Diversity did this performance which was basically promoting Black Lives Matter. And I thought that they were quite misguided.
One of the most complained about bits of television in a decade.
Yes, it is now the most complained about.
Oh, it is now, right.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. So people didn't like it. And the woke, of which Piers Morgan seems to be a member of these days, couldn't see why they didn't like it, because it's promoting Black Lives Matter and everyone thinks that Black Lives Matter, but they're completely missing the point that this Black Lives Matter is a political organization rooted in Marxist theology that kind of want to disrupt our way of life. They call capitalism a whiteness that needs to be destroyed. They're against the family unit, they're anti-Semitic, all of these horrible, horrible things. And essentially they've wrapped that up in this anti-racist campaign to kind of look like the good guy, and kind of it's a Trojan horse, really. And I'm standing up to say, no, yeah, Black lives do matter, but all lives matter. And that's the importance. We don't need to separate people out based on their skin tone. And this is all I said. I don't think it was anything particularly controversial. But people took a bit of issue with it, including Piers Morgan, which, of course, he did let me speak occasionally, but I don't think I actually finished a single point.
Well, anyway, let's play the clip that went viral on the internet.
Completely relate. I've experienced quite a lot of racism myself too, especially since this Black Lives Matter movement took off, which is why I'm so against it, because it is stoking up racial tensions where they didn't really exist to begin with. There are elements of racism in this country that we need to stamp out, but while we're seeing everything as racist, we're kind of undermining those actual racial issues that we need to address, and that's what BLM is all about. It's critical race theory. That's why I don't like that.
Do you believe, Calvin, in your heart, do you believe in this country, tolerant though it is, certainly by comparison to many other countries, do you believe that there is genuine racial equality across the board for black people in this country?
I think everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed in this country. Absolutely. It's a fantastic place to live, which is why I live here. It's a great place. I don't think we need to kind of say it's a racist country or there's institutional racism or anything like that. There are elements of racism that we need to address and we need to stamp out, but we're not on the same level as America. It's completely different over there.
The majority of football stars in the Premier League are black. How many black chairmen or owners or managers of Premier League clubs are there currently?
Well, even the Premier League are saying, look, we're not going to use Black Lives Matter as a slogan anymore.
I'm just asking you. I'm asking you.
Now, I mean, what you said there, to most people listening, would, I imagine, or at least I'd like to think so, that most people would think, well, I thought actually he was, pretty nuanced there. You recognised that there is racism in this country. It exists in the UK. But you just reject the notion that this country is one in which black people face institutional racism.
Absolutely. I've experienced racism all throughout my life. I know it exists in this country, and it's definitely an evil that we need to stamp out. We need to get rid of it completely. But we don't do that through critical race theory. We don't do that through this premise that white people are naturally racist, whether overtly or unconsciously, and that black people are oppressed. I honestly think the more that you tell people they're oppressed, the more they'll start to believe it. In this country, we have equal opportunities. It's not completely meritocratic, and we do need to work on that. But I feel like I can become anything I set my mind to. And I want other people to think the same. This is what I teach my pupils, or what I did when I was in classrooms. I'll be like, what, you can be whatever you want to be if you work hard enough. And that's what we need to teach our young people. Not that, you're held back, you're oppressed because of the color of your skin, you won't be able to succeed. We don't want them to be grown in a negative victimhood mentality. I don't see why that's appropriate. And that's why I thought the performance was inappropriate, because that's the message that was essentially sending.
What could you just explain for our listeners what critical race theory actually is?
Yeah, sorry, I use this term all the time now. Just forgetting that it's not even, everyday Joe won't even have read it into this, but it's been. You will notice that if you look around for it, you'll see it's being shoveled into everyday aspects of our lives now, from government websites to advertising campaigns, and it's this premise that white privilege is a thing, so that white people are privileged based on the color of their skin, and black people are oppressed. And I think, I've experienced a lot of different types of privilege in my life. I think I live a relatively privileged life, but I think I've also experienced disadvantages as I've gone through life, and these things change. They've changed as I've grown and I've entered different, from going to university, that gave me an advantage. From getting a degree, that gave me an advantage. Nothing is set in stone. And I certainly haven't experienced all of the advantages and all of the disadvantages based on the color of my skin. And there's plenty of evidence to debunk all of this. As a school teacher, I've seen firsthand that black African kids excel all through school. In fact, they exceed white British kids in primary and secondary, and they're twice as likely to go to university. So that's, this is the kind of evidence that suggests to me that first of all, the education system is definitely not institutional and racist, no matter how much people say it is. Or if it is, it's certainly not in the way that Black Lives Matter are orchestrating. It would suggest that, it's the other way around. And perhaps there are issues that race does play in our everyday life, but it's not solely down to race. So a lot of issues we have in this country are down to class and other demographics that are kind of disregarded by critical race theory, because they put race as the sole problem that is kind of affecting everyone's lives. And this is divisive. It's done on purpose. It's separating people out based on white and non-white, or as they call them, BMEs, or black and ethnic minorities. And I don't think you can separate people out in that way. We're all in this country, we are all British, and we all stand together. We all agree and disagree on many things. I'm sure you and I would agree on many more things than me and my father, for example. And that's because we share similar politics. We both fought for Brexit, for example, whereas my father was a Remainer, and that has nothing to do with the colour of our skin. We have common similarities.
And you wrote about this for the Telegraph, and I'll get that up on screen. And you argue here, as a black man, it's now almost impossible to stand up to the Black Lives Matter agenda. And I was really struck by this line after your appearance. You write that one comedian demanded your arrest, and a leading left-wing blogger called you a water boy to fascism. And I just go back to that point. What you've argued for doesn't seem at all controversial, and it definitely, I'd put money on the fact that it wouldn't to the vast majority. And actually, you are an extremely balanced and measured person. What the hell is going on here?
This is what I don't get. I think there's some kind of cognitive dissonance at play here, that they seem to think, these people who are fighting against me at the moment seem to think that I'm against them. I'm not against anyone. I'm against this methodology that's being pushed, because I think it's damaging to our young people. It's damaging to our society. I'm not saying that, again, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that racism isn't a thing. But what I'm saying is, when my grandfather came over here during the Windrush generation, he had a really, really tough time. And likewise, my father had a really difficult time, but not as bad. And likewise, for me, growing up, I experienced a lot of racism, which I have written about in the past, but not as bad as my father or his father. And I think we are getting better. It's progress, and we need to acknowledge that progress and celebrate our successes. And then we can work on stamping out the gaps that are still there. But we can't do that while we're saying this is a racist country and everything is racist. And if we look for racism everywhere, I'm sure we'll see it. Like, people who look to be offended are always offended. It's a choice sometimes to take offense at things and to see it through a racist lens, when it often isn't. I think intent comes into it, and this comes back down to critical race theory, in that, for me, racism is the traditional definition that it's prejudice or discrimination against someone based on the color of their skin or their ethnicity or whatever. Whereas it's being redefined now by these critical race theorists that racism is a power struggle between white people and non-white people. And that's not true. Just this week, I've experienced more racism than I have in years, and that hasn't been from white people. Let's say that.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, in the piece as well, I was struck by, you argue that it's a pretty racist idea that assumes black people can only have one set of opinions, right?
Yeah, this is what gets to me the most. So many of the comments, especially from people that I've known for a long time, saying, Calvin, you've disappointed me. You've let the side down. You've sold your soul. You're a sellout. You're an Uncle Tom. It's like... And people that I don't know have been using stronger language that I won't use, but it's just the idea that I'm no longer one of them, or I'm not black enough because I don't agree with every single thing that they agree with. Like, we all have to subscribe to one single approved narrative, again, based on the color of our skin. I make my opinions formed on my experiences, formed on a whole host of things, not just my skin color. My skin color is a part of my identity, absolutely, but it's not the core of my identity. I think that's the problem. I'm British, I'm Christian, I'm a mostly conservative, I'm quite, at the same time, I'm quite economically liberal. There's lots of aspects to my character. I believe in education, and I happen to have brown skin. And I can't help that. So I'm not sure that's a thing that I should be ashamed of or celebrate, to be honest with you. And I think it's dangerous when people do.
And you're part of the Don't Divide Us campaign. It is called the Don't Divide Us campaign, isn't it? Yeah. And could you just explain to us what this is and why you're so passionate about it?
So this is the campaign that says, look, this stuff is damaging, this stuff is dangerous, the CRT, the critical race theory, because it's trying to divide us in order to break down society and rebuild it in a Marxist image. But we're not just going to sit around and moan. We're going to offer alternatives and positive alternatives. And we think, there's a lot of things we can celebrate in this country, and coming under that united umbrella of Britishness. It is a culture that has a lot to be proud of and thankful for, and we can all work together in this wider community to make it an even better place. We can get rid of those final elements of racism together that we all do acknowledge, but we can't sit around and say, actually, this is a racist country, and the reason I haven't succeeded is because I'm being held back on the color of my skin. What we need to do is say, actually, you can become anything you want to do. You want to be, just work hard, and we will all help each other. And I think, don't divide us. We put out letters and resources and things to help people understand what is going on at the moment. Because a lot of people have reached out to us and said, what, the world's going mad. What is this? Everywhere I look, it's white privilege. This, you're oppressing me. You're a racist. In schools, we've got young white kids going home crying, upset, being told because they've been told that they're racist and they didn't realize it. And we've got parents saying, actually, my kid isn't racist. My kid doesn't see color. My kid's got lots of friends of different ethnicities. That's not a problem. But they're now being told that they're racist. And on the other end of the spectrum, we've got young black kids who are saying, oh, I didn't realize that the reason I haven't achieved anything yet is because it's my skin color holding me back. And again, that's a damaging mindset to get people in.
And so I'm always struck by, and you reminded me there of speaking to Catherine Burble-Singh from the Michaela School, and she, her school is very diverse, and she talks about her kids at that school being united by Britishness, being united by singing God Save the Queen, being united by seeing the Union flag, and actually the values that flag and our nation's values represent could not be better encapsulated than that school. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. So I'm a governor at that school. I think it's a fantastic place. The values are British, and it is a case of, you stand up when the headmistress walks into the room as a sign of respect. You sing God Save the Queen together because it's something that unites us, brings us all together. And Miss Burble-Singh will say, what, doesn't matter where your family is from, doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter what skin color you are, we are all here together, British. And that's something that unites us and brings us together. And I love that. And to me, that's what Don't Divide Us is part of. And, Catherine is a signatory on that as well. And in her school, she goes against everything that the progressives will say that, this kid can't quite meet those standards because he's got a difficult home life, or, he's got a broken family, or he's only got one, he's from an ethnic minority, he's not going to succeed. We need to make excuses for them, Don't expect the homework. Don't expect such hard work. Don't expect this and that. And what Catherine says is, no, we need to raise those expectations, raise those standards for all kids. That is how we bring everyone up together, black, white, whatever. It doesn't matter. We don't make excuses. We don't lower those standards, because that's the bigotry that holds people back. And it's very, very similar to this critical race theory mentality of, victimhood. That's where it all comes from.
And I saw a great tweet from Inaya Iman on Twitter, and she says, the woke are humorless, nasty and reactionary. By all means, let's expose their behaviour. But that's not enough. At some point, she says, we actually need to forge a vision that is more compelling and unifying than the dangerous narrative of a power struggle between identities. I wonder if you've had any thoughts about how conservatism, instead of, going on the defensive all the time and saying, well, this stuff is clearly insane, how do we actually offer an optimistic vision for bringing us all together?
I think we just have to look at what's worked in the past. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would say, color blindness is the way forward, in that we need to look at each other for the content of a character, not the color of our skin. That's absolutely the key for me. We need to look at what people are doing, how hard they work, what grades they get, rather than what color they are. And that applies to every aspect of society. You look at organizations like the BBC that are putting out job specs. The first thing, the massive block paragraph of their job specs is all about race and identity and the color of your skin and all these things that don't affect the way you do your job. And we see that all throughout public bodies at the moment. We need to go back to more of a meritocratic idea, I think, and we can umbrella all of that, like I say, in Britishness. We can define these values. We can talk about, democracy, the rule of law, tolerance of people of different faiths or none, inclusivity, all of these things that we value as important. And again, it's not saying that these are exclusively British, but it's saying that these are things that we see as important to our way of life. And I can think of many countries that don't celebrate these values. So it's very important that we do.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's time for a little bit of humour, don't you? It's just a shame that it's the BBC definition of humour or comedy. And I'm talking about this clip that was doing the rounds online yesterday from the show of so-called comedian Frankie Boyle's so-called comedy show, Frankie Boyle's New World Order. Let's just play the clip and then we'll discuss it.
Like white power is Trump Tower. Like these things are put against each other. But when we say we want to kill Whitey, we don't really mean we want to kill Whitey. We do. But when we say we want to kill Whitey, it's like it's a capitalist. Not today.
Finish the show.
But when people react to people saying that white privilege, whiteness is a capitalist structure. It benefits itself. It hurts white people. It hurts non-black people. It hurts black people. But still, this kind of fear of a black alternative, and it's these sort of rhetorics battled against each other. These extreme capitalist rhetorics of supremacy.
Now, Calvin, there have been reports that the new BBC Director General, and you'll know this in your work with Defund the BBC, have planned to tackle perceived left-wing bias in BBC comedy. He clearly believes that the corporation's comedic output is rightly perceived as one-sided, and he says he's determined to do something about it. So reports say. But I'm sorry, Calvin, I don't see what part of that unchallenged rant by a so-called comedian that seems pretty damn intent on dividing us with this hateful, unintelligible word soup of divisive dross counts as comedy. And I'm very confused as to why the hell our cash is paying for it. Do you agree?
I like that. Unintelligible word soup is a good definition of what we just watched. There's so much to break down from this because I just can't understand how they think this was okay, the people that put this out. Because first of all, like you say, it's unchallenged. So Frankie Boyle used to be the most edgy comedian on television.
Yeah.
And now he seems to have gone completely woke. He could have had so many things to say against this, let's kill the whitey nonsense. But he didn't, and no one did. Everyone sat around the table nodding, not challenging it, which is a problem. But also, the BBC's role, their charter explicitly says rather, that they have to work on social cohesion. They should encourage social cohesion. This isn't bringing people together. This is divisive. This is toxic. And like you say, we're paying for this. And I think people are getting sick and tired of it. People are getting angry about this situation because they're seeing this day to day. And like you've mentioned, the new Director General said he wants to cut out some of this lefty bias. But it's not just left-wing bias. I think it is a very particular worldview that the BBC's got. It's very metropolitan, liberal, elite, woke. And I know people don't like that word woke, but it's perfect to define it because it is this moral superiority that we have, where we know better. And, all white people are bad. And it's okay to joke about that because all black people know that. And we don't need to challenge it because everyone knows that white superiority and white privilege are a thing. And it always comes back to identity politics and critical race theory, which is infecting so much of our lives. We just need to stand up against it, say this is not okay. And the BBC needs to cut this out or balance it out or challenge it. Do something, but don't just keep pumping this nonsense out.
I mean, you've put it beautifully, but I think the presenters, Frankie Boyle and the other presenter, I think it's Sarah Pascoe, the faces of them, let's just get them on screen. Look at her face. Like she's sort of, and then Frankie Boyle's face as well. Yeah, that's the faces of these two here. That's like, oh shit, I cannot outwoke these people. That I'm done now. I'm done. That's me done.
That is exactly it. It's almost a competition, isn't it, to be the most woke.
Exactly.
But the left eats itself, as we know. You can never be too woke for them. They will always find something that you've done or said wrong, something in your moral fibre that it goes against the current wokeness. So it doesn't help you to be woke. It's good to stand up against this and say, actually, no, my moral values don't allow me to say kill the whitey and think that that's okay.
And surely, Calvin, what it all boils down to ultimately is that we are, and the viewers at home are utterly powerless to do anything about this, really. And we have to fund the salaries of those that produce this content, that don't challenge this content. And by the way, I think that after the whole Dr. Starkey debate, after I had him on my show and he said that comment, and I was criticised, and I think rightly so, I was criticised for not challenging one thing that he said. And I'm wondering, Calvin, where's the same blue tick brigade criticising these so-called comedians?
That's a good point, Darren. And the problem is, it's not what he said. It's the way he said it. Because he said it from a different perspective. David Starkey was coming from one angle of the political spectrum, whereas this comedian is coming from the other end. So it's not that they said something that's outrageous and politically incorrect. It's that they said it from the wrong end of the spectrum. And that's where the problem is, in that it's okay to be far left. It's not okay to be anywhere on the right, from centre right onwards, to be honest with you. We've shifted politics so far to the left. But I mean, you were right. You came out and you apologized for that. You made a correction, and you owned up. You put your hands up. I've not seen the BBC do anything like that. No. In fact, I just see them repeating the same mistake over and over again. And people, you're right as well. You said that people are powerless. Well, they're not powerless. What they can do is they can back us. They can back defund the BBC. Go to our GoFundMe page, gofundme.com/defund-the-BBC. Pledge towards us. Get involved. It is a grassroots campaign. Let everyone know. Let your voice be heard. That we are sick and tired of being preached at and lectured to and told that we're bad people just for having normal, common sense values, everyday values.
Exactly. But I mean, it's that, we have to fund these so-called comedians with right-on woke opinions that blatantly breach these impartiality rules if we want to watch a television set. It's so wrong. And do you agree with me that where's the Conservative Party in this? They've got an 80-seat majority. What are they doing with it?
Yeah, I have issues with this at the moment because we both have worked, with a lot of Tories in the past, and I've put a lot of time and effort into campaigning for the Conservative Party, and I wanted them to get into power because I wanted to avoid the mess that was Corbyn, but also that I believed that the Conservative Party stood for our values. And I haven't seen any evidence of that yet, and that's what concerns me. They've not stood up for common sense values, British values. The whole of the country, the majority of the country, is small c Conservative. We believe in protecting beauty and the family and all of these things, and not being too woke, but being liberal in the sense that we encourage other people to hold their own opinions, but not forcing those opinions on others. And that's what I think is Britishness. But I haven't seen the Tories stand up for that. In fact, they're probably moving more towards the left in these social issues. But also economically, I don't know what's going on at the moment. I campaigned against the magic money tree, and they seem to be splashing out left, right, and centre as if spending money gets us out of a pandemic. So they're no longer socially liberal, no longer socially conservative, no longer economically liberal. I don't know where that party stands, and this is coming out of frustration because I care so much about it.
But there are signs of change. Did you see that piece by Ben Bradley on Conservative Home, where he said, I'm not going to, I think it was unconscious bias training, I'm just not going to take it. And because the Parliament are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on this stuff. And I don't know, do you agree with the likes of President Trump, who's just said, this is nonsense, we are not spending any more taxpayer cash on this?
I love what Trump has done, but it was very authoritarian. It wouldn't work here. It's a different country, different approach. But it's nice that he just stumped it out, said CRT is wrong. We don't want it. Thank you. Goodbye. What we need to do is, Ben Bradley's been great with this. Tom Tuggenhart, Steve Baker. We do still have a few stalwarts in the party that are saying, actually, we don't want any more of this nonsense, and we want to stand up for civil liberties and people's freedoms. So we do have a few of them, but we need more of them. And I think the government could say that maybe these things are not obligatory, for example, as in the first instance, and say, because I know that the Prime Minister's had to sit through this diversity training and be told that he's a bad guy because he's white. I don't think that's okay for anyone to have to do.
No, definitely not. Now, anyway, let's get our blood pressure turned up just a bit and talk about the BBC Rich List. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but in anticipation of a right drubbing after it announced, after it knew it was going to announce the BBC Rich List, and which lefty lovies are being made multi-millionaires, it started using our money to pay someone to tweet and convince us that their use of our money is good value in defence of the licence fee. Does this strike you that there are clearly desperate times here at the BBC? They're under threat like never before because of the success of the Defund the BBC movement.
Oh, absolutely. I saw your tweet about this. I thought it was spot on. They're spending money to encourage us, that they're spending our money wisely. It's kind of, surely they see the irony in that. But the amount of money they waste, they're spending 100 million on diversity, as again, from a CRT background, and it's all superficial diversity. They want more black faces, but more black faces that think the same is a problem at the BBC. They're spending 100 million on chasing non-license fee payers. They're wasting money left, right, and centre, millions and millions of pounds. We're paying pay rises for these millionaires out of our own money, and at the same time they're saying actually we need to start charging over 75s because we don't have enough cash. What? That's outrageous.
Exactly.
How dare they?
So I mean the rich list, it came out, and then it said basically that Gary Lineker earned a tabletop in 1.75 million in 2018 to 2019, but the corporation's new Director General, Tim Davie, had said that Lineker agreed to a pay cut. And he added that Gary, or at least according to The Guardian, that Gary knows his responsibility to the BBC in terms of his use of social media. But I'm sorry, Calvin, as soon as this came out, Gary Lineker was on social media and he dismissed The Guardian's report of the story as not true and said that the BBC recognised that he tweets carefully. And I mean, what utter nonsense is this, Calvin? He has a history of virtue signalling on Twitter, on everything from, the English Channel crisis to Brexit, and all semblance of impartiality is completely thrown out of the window. Do you have any hope that Gary Lineker will become a changed man when it comes to social media and impartiality?
He won't, and this is another problem that, the BBC will say one thing and do another. Like they said, they're going to cut out all this political tweeting, but then at the same time said to the celebrities, it's okay for you guys because you're freelancers, and it's not okay. And I think it comes down to, again, that people like Gary Lineker are tweeting political content from the right end of the political spectrum, so it's okay for what he's saying because he's woke enough. If he was tweeting things that were anti-immigration, for example, there is no way they'd let him get away with it. And it is all about the approved narrative, and he's tweeting from that, so he's going to be fine. And again, it's lecturing, it's patronising the everyday British citizen who has to pay the BBC in order to watch any live television. It's not fair and it's not okay.
Exactly. And I mean, what's extraordinary here is that the BBC, clearly does recognise that there's a problem with social media accounts and those with, let's be honest, left liberal metropolitan views, or they wouldn't even be discussing this. And, Lineker was so vocal in his opposition to Brexit at one point that in 2019, Jonathan Agnew, the BBC's cricket correspondent, took him to task and said, Gary, you are the face of BBC Sport. Please observe BBC editorial guidelines and keep your political views to yourself. I'd be sacked if I followed your example. Absolutely. And that highlights exactly what you've just said, which is that those with the right opinions are free to, wax lyrical until their heart's content about whatever liberal hobby horse that they've got to talk about at that time. But someone, with culturally conservative views, for example, wouldn't be able to do so.
Yeah, it's double standards, isn't it? And I can see on the screen you've got that news article talking about the pay gap as well, as if we have to pay people like Zoe Ball an extra £1 million to plug a pay gap rather than actually just paying the men a bit less. I think would balance things out, especially when we're talking about giving pay rises to people that have lost the BBC a million viewers or listeners rather. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm not sure that is the reason behind it. I think they're just saying these things because it's woke enough to be accepted. Who's going to argue against giving people a pay rise to close the gender pay gap?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that, to me, that really highlights the rubbing the salt in the wound factor, right? Which is that this was so Zoe Ball is a Radio 2 presenter, and she's now earning 1.36 million, despite losing nearly 1 million listeners for the radio station. And because the corporation pledged to tackle the gender pay gap, Zoe Ball got a £900,000 pay rise off of the backs of the licence fee payer. And I just say, Calvin, would this be allowed to happen in the private sector just to fiddle their gender pay gap statistics? It strikes me as being completely wrong and going to the heart of the entire problem with the BBC.
It's disgusting money, isn't it, Darren? £900,000 pay rise. What is that about? But the thing is, it's out of our money. That's the problem. So the BBC can say, yeah, we'll give you nearly £1 million pay rise. because it's coming out of the taxpayers, it's coming out of the license fee payers' accounts. It's absolutely atrocious. And then at the same time, they're going to ask us for more money.
Exactly. And then, I mean, it's highlighted, if we consider the actual sum, so it's gone up by, total pay has gone up by 3.5% to 1.5 billion quid. And the corporation, as you highlighted earlier, but I wonder if you can just elaborate why it's such an injustice. And if we think about the fact that it's young people as well, students who are more likely to be at home when the licensing authority comes knocking at their door, they end up getting in trouble. Single mothers statistically more likely to get in trouble. And going back to that point you made, that the corporation is boosting the pay and giving £900,000 to Zoe Ball just to get around its gender pay gap reporting figures. And it's pushing ahead with plans to strip 1 million over 75s of their free TV licence, recognising them as the one group that they know will pay for a licence fee out of fear of being punished by the authorities.
Yeah, they're disproportionately targeting the vulnerable. And that's what makes this like a racket almost. You know, like you said, they're going after the elderly, but they're also going after women quite a lot. And that's probably because, well, a whole host of reasons, but the magistrates' courts are clogged up with women who are being fined and taken through because they haven't paid the TV license. Why are they going after the vulnerable in society, taking their money from hard-working individuals who can't barely afford to get by in this COVID life, in these COVID times? Why are they going after the cash-strapped people to then give pay rises to literal millionaires? How is that not disgusting? How can anyone say that that's okay to do? I'm not sure on what moral high ground they can sit there and preach to us and tell us that we're the bad guys and we're not living our lives correctly because we're not working enough. And at the same time, they're robbing the poor to pay the rich. It's a reverse Robin Hood situation going on at the BBC. I think more people need to stand up against this and say, actually, I'm not going to pay my license fee anymore. Cancel that direct debit. You know, go to defundbbc.uk and get some advice on how you can continue watching TV without one, and just don't pay for it. Don't do it. Say no.
But I mean, it's I guess the issue is, isn't it, that if I want to watch Newcastle United get thrashed on live television, which I do that through a Now TV subscription to access Sky Sports. But me doing that, I have to have a license fee or I'm breaking the law because it's live television. And that, you know, the license fee is, and the way in which we legislate the license fee, it's a regressive acronym in the modern broadcasting world. And I go back to that point I asked you about earlier, which is that the Conservative Party really ought to pull its finger out when it comes to the BBC. You mentioned there, you highlighted the fact that this is really regressive and it is, you know, pulling away from pensioners, etc., to fund Zoe Ball's £900,000 pay rise for a failing radio station. If the Conservative Party is a genuine people's government, surely it makes sense for the people's government to do something about this regressive form of taxation by stealth.
Absolutely. And I think this is one area that they will. I think they've noticed that, you know, this grassroots campaign that we're involved in at Defund the BBC has gained so much traction. There are so many ordinary folks that are fed up with what the BBC is doing that the government has had to take notice. And it is absolutely backwards and incomprehensible that we have to pay the BBC to watch any live television streamed anywhere in real time. That makes no sense whatsoever when there are hundreds of Freeview channels. You know, we can even pick up foreign channels. We can watch, like you say, Now TV and Sky and Virgin, even live things on YouTube. We have to pay a license fee. So why that's happening, why the BBC is getting our money for things that we're doing that have nothing to do with them doesn't make sense. I think we need to move to a model where the BBC charter only covers BBC content. And if you want to opt into what the BBC are doing, pay them, fair enough. But if you don't, you know, watch the hundreds of thousands of other content providers that are out there.
Calvin, I wonder if, to bring proceedings to a close, I think a lot of people watching will find the conversation that I speak so highly of myself, I assume, I hope, people will be watching this thinking, wow, this has been a breath of fresh air, this conversation. But I wonder if you've any thoughts for those who, and I get emailed about this all the time actually, you know, we live in an age in which you are met by a torrent of abuse for saying things that the vast majority of people would agree with you with on national television. And we live in an age where Conservative members of Parliament can't go to universities without being no platformed.
Yeah.
And we live in an age in which increasingly free speech, open debate, tolerance is just under threat like never before. And I wonder if you've any thoughts for those who email me, who tweet you, and just say, I despair for what's happening to this country. I just despair. And I don't know what to do about this anymore. I genuinely fear for what's happening to this country, which I think is a great country, which I think is a tolerant a country in which if you work hard, you can get ahead, no matter what your sexual orientation, your skin colour. You can go far in this country. And I genuinely believe that with every fibre of my being. But increasingly, I'm told that that's an ignorant view, that is a complete bastardisation of where we're at as a nation. And what would your message be to those people who look to you, look to people, commentators like yourself, who speak with such optimism and ease about how great this country is? What do you think your message is to those people?
That's a good question, because I think, at the start of this, we spoke a lot about the negativity and the backlash that I had. But I think it's important to highlight that I also, for every idiot on Twitter being racially abusive towards me, I also had 10 people in my DMs or on my Facebook Messenger or on my Instagram, or I've even been stopped in the street over the last few days by people who've pulled over the car to shake my hand and say thank you for standing up for common sense values. Thank you for saying what ordinary people like me think. So I think it's important to highlight that normal people are on our side in this, in fighting against this woke nonsense, in saying that, we don't want to divide the nation. We are stronger together. We are better as a united kingdom. And to get to that point, I think the silent majority just has to stop being silent. We have to make a stand. So many of my supporters on Twitter have got flags as their avatars, and they've got random pseudonyms. People need to, put your face up there, put your name up there, be you, own you, because that's what they do. And it kind of legitimizes them and makes us look like trolls. I think we have to stand up and kind of say, this is who I am. I'm Calvin, a teacher, and my views are particularly right wing on this issue. And I believe in, the royal family and families in general, to be honest, and British values, Christian values. And I think we are a united nation. We're a strong place where anyone can get by, pick themselves up by their bootstraps and make anything of their lives and become whatever they want to be. And we all have to own it. We all have to stand up together and say, yes, this is us. This is Britishness. We believe in this. And we're not ashamed of it, and we're proud of it. And that is okay. And if everyone does that, then this very vocal minority who are turning their opponents into evil caricatures so that they can be racist and horrible and just abusive towards us, won't have a leg to stand on. And they'll realize that hopefully they'll realize that actually they are the bad guys in this scenario, because they are not arguing on our debates. They're not telling us why our points are wrong or our arguments might be invalid. They're just attacking us on our immutable characteristics. And that isn't nice. That is a bad thing to do. So we need to hold a mirror up to them, but we also need to make a stand ourselves and say, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I hope people do listen to that, and I hope something does change, because for me, what's important as far as our discourse is concerned, I'd like to actually be speaking about issues that I think impact every single community up and down the British Isles, up and down in all 4 constituent parts of the United Kingdom. Issues like the fact that I think it's something as high 18% of kids leave school without being able to get any qualification whatsoever, and as far as being able to read and write's concerned, I think it's something as high as 18%. I was speaking to Nick Buckley, the charity boss, this week. He's a fantastic guy, and these issues. What about things like fatherless homes as well? We're just not discussing these issues that do impact every single community up and down the country. Why are our kids going off to join gangs? They go through the education system and they get to secondary school and they think, well, I can't do this. And because we have for the most part, there are schools like Michaela, which obviously you're a part of, but there are the vast majority of schools where we have a one-size-fits-all system, and some kids should be in different schools. You know, we should have more diversity and more school choice, so our kids don't end up frustrated and think, well, you know, I'm thick, I'm stupid, I can't achieve anything out of life, and they end up getting very angry in adolescence and going off and joining these gangs and things like that. And we're not discussing these very serious issues. Instead, we're just saying, well, I tell you what, it's because this country's systemically racist.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like, again, racism is an issue in this country, but we are on your side. We're not against you. You know, we're not quite there yet. We do need to stamp out what's remaining of racism, but it's not racism that's holding you back. There are a lot of problems in our society that we need to address. Fatherlessness, you mentioned, is a major one. Yeah. But you know, this argument that this, you know, we need to make the curriculum more black and add more black history and all these things are all coming down to identity politics of people saying, well, I don't see anyone that looks like me there, so I can't do that. And that we need to flip that around and say, be that person. If you don't see anyone that looks like you, you know, this has been traditionally a white majority country. There won't be many high-profile figures of ethnic minorities. There are more now. In fact, we've got the most diverse cabinet we've ever had. But if you see something and you say, I don't see anyone that looks like me in that field, be that person. Be that person for everyone else. Model that best practice. Be a role model and stand up and make something of your life, and don't think you can't do it just because no one's done it before you. That's what I think we really need to do.
Well, listen, Calvin, that's great. I could speak to you all evening about all of this, but I know you're a very busy man at the moment. But honestly, I think I'll speak for all of our viewers today when I say thank you so much for what you're doing. You're a reasoned and reasonable voice in an age of much unreason. So thank you very much for joining Reason today, and keep it up.
Cheers, Darren. Always a pleasure, mate.
Right, now, if you've enjoyed the show, as I said at the start, we're halfway towards securing our fundraising target. The link will be in the description to that GoFundMe page. And give us a little subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Have a good night. Cheers.